What's up, everybody? It's JayViper here, and I have finished Star Wars Outlaws, and I want to tell you exactly what I felt about it. But before we get to that, do me a huge favor, click the like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Let's get to it.
JayViper is awesome. He's so good looking. He's got the crown in all.
First off, there's going to be a few light spoilers in here, but I don't think it really matters because, to be honest, you could see pretty much everything coming a mile away in this game, which is one of the downfalls. So let's start with the basics, right? The things that this game just really couldn't seem to get a hold of. The AI in this game was so subpar. It was so frustrating to deal with. You would go into an area, the AI could pick you up, it could not pick you up. You'd be behind a box and they would see you from a mile away. And this is a stealth game, right? You'd be crouched, waiting there, and they'd be trying to get into a door. They'd think they'd see you. They'd be looking one way. You'd sneak by to the right, and they would somehow hear you. Sometimes they'd see you, sometimes they wouldn't see you. It was just inconsistent, and it became a very frustrating thing. There was times where I was actually, I would get them to go yellow, right, which is where they think they heard something, and I would just be going through the mission, and they would stay yellow, and then I'd just have these yellow icons all over the screen, and I'd be far away, and the AI is just stuck in this searching mode, even though they should quit after a certain amount of time. But the actual stealth in this game is actually just really subpar, which was surprising because this does come from Assassin's Creed Ubisoft, but it was just really, really poorly done. The layout of some of the levels were good for stealth, but then the stealth would fail so often, and they would just be looking right at you sometimes and do nothing. Other times they'd be searching and looking at you, but you're in a vent, and it just felt silly. Speaking of silly, the takedowns of this game, almost all of them were ridiculous. So many times you would do something like touch them on the leg, and they would drop their gun before you ever touched them, and then you'd punch them in their armor, and then they would just be knocked out. And it was just constantly punching people in helmets or punching them in the kidney and just turning people around and just backhand slapping them and they're out. It didn't make any sense. There was no weapon. You didn't have a club. It was just, it felt ridiculous. That's the best way I can put it. On top of that, Vess herself wasn't very charismatic at all. There was times where she was well voice acted and other times where I felt like this voice actress is just doesn't know what to do. She doesn't have good material. Maybe she's not very good. But overall, just the charismatic nature and the writing behind Vess was beyond poor. I was very disappointed in how they treated her. And on top of that, the background characters weren't done very well. The cinematics and the talking and all of that, so often, like, the lips weren't even synced up. They would just be doing weird things with their eyes. They would look like they were just standing there and talking like this and not blinking, and then they just do this weird little blink, and they just keep... It was just so strange. Like, the game felt cheap for a $70 game, completely cheap. It was very disappointing. Now, it wasn't all negative, although it mostly was negative in this game, I'll be honest. There was very little in the game that was enjoyable or that I felt was done well. One of the things that felt pretty good was your little partner, Nix. He was super helpful. It was pretty easy to tell him to do what you wanted. Sometimes it was tough, like if you were behind a box and you're trying to tell him to go do something, it would just be clicking things and you couldn't really, even though you're in third person, you couldn't really point on the floor where you wanted him to go or tell him what you wanted to get. And in the middle of combat, I felt like sometimes he was just way too slow in getting the thing that you're asking for. He'd be taking his time, and it was a little bit frustrating. But for the most part, he was actually a great addition to the game, and I really liked him. The other thing I really liked was the Ashiga clan, which this developer team actually designed themselves. And I think they did a great job on that. And they did a great job on Kijimi, the city that they're in. Kijimi felt great. And we saw Kijimi in, I think it was the Last Skywalker. Yes, it was the Last Skywalker. So they did a great job in making that city again. But that was a really nice place. I liked that. Outside of that, I feel like that's pretty much where things I liked ended. Although I will say I did like the completionist aspect of things. The side quests were much better than the story, I felt. And then there was always like little things you could find, and you had this transponder, you could find things like the exploration was pretty good. Once you got past the fact that the speeder was not very satisfying to drive. It was actually, it drove poorly. And for someone who started playing keyboard and mouse is absolutely a horrible way to play this game, because as soon as you get on that speeder, it does not handle well with keyboard and mouse. So I had to switch to controller, and then of course from there, I don't really like shooting games with controller, but I didn't care for this game and the shooting and the stealth already. So it didn't feel like I was really losing anything switching controller at that point. Because, well, the ground combat wasn't very good. It was very basic. You had a gun where you could switch modes as you leveled up. There was like a plasma mode, there was a burst, there's a regular mode, and there was a like electric mode where anything that had blue on it, you could shoot their blue shield, and then you could shoot them with a regular gun. But combat doesn't end there. You go to space. In the space combat, because of their choice with the ship, you just felt slow. It felt plodding. It wasn't very fun. You just felt underpowered most of the time. I didn't feel like the options for the guns really added to anything. There was one where it was more of like a charge up shot that did more damage, but then it overheated kind of fast. You had another one was just regular shots. None of it really felt very good. The shielding system was okay, but it was very basic. It was just very basic. There was no simulation really, I felt. It was very like a slow arcade type of space combat, if that makes any sense. It felt okay, flying felt fine, but when it came to combat, you felt like you were in a really slow moving freighter, and it wasn't exciting, and there was no getting away, and you had to push every fight. And then when you started shooting things, you realized, wow, I can't really die, and it just, nothing really felt good about space combat. It just felt kind of tacked on, and like they needed to have it because it was Star Wars. The open world aspect of it wasn't really open world, I would say. There's only 3 real maps, right, with like full map, which is Tatooine, we all know, Tashara, and Akiva. Tatooine is kind of what you think. It was big, open, sandy areas. It's pretty easy to get around. It looked like Tatooine, felt like Tatooine. I liked it. It was okay. There was some really big empty places, which makes sense. But at the same time, it was like I'm just driving forever. Tashara was a well laid out map. But then at the same time, there were these tunnels that they would put you in, and you would just be going down these tunnels for what seemed like forever, for no reason, with no enemies, just driving down a tunnel, running down a tunnel. It felt unnecessary, and it was actually just really pretty boring, and I don't know why they chose to do that. Akiva looked really nice. It's more of a jungle, hot, rainy place, but I felt like it was very boxed in. You were down tunnels a lot. There was this area of water that you couldn't get across at first, but you do unlock like an upgrade for your speeder where you can go across the water. But the one thing I didn't really appreciate was as soon as you unlock that, that's part of the main quest. The next step in the main quest is the end. So you unlock this ability to go across water, and then you're finishing the game. So it felt like it was way too late in the game to unlock that. And so you never really get to explore Kiva. Although at the end of the game, of course, you can go back and go get all the 100%ing stuff. But I just felt like something got cut from the game. So another thing that bothered me a little bit was the Zarek Besh, okay? They were designed like they had welding masks on, and that was pretty much it. They were wearing black with these welding masks and orange visors, and that was just them. They were very basic, pretty boring, and those were the big bad guys in the game. So for one, they took a lot to kill, which is fine. But I'm talking like 3 of the big power-up plasma shots. There's this moment, okay, spoiler, where one of the bounty hunters who was hunting you, who you actually talked to and did a mission with at one point, she let you go. So you've just finished the heist, and Vale decides to turn on them. And she shoots these people in one shot each with just a regular gun. It was ridiculous. And a lot of the cinematics are ridiculous, poorly acted, badly written. And that was it right there. Instead of her just taking Sliro as a hostage and making these guys go away, which would have made more sense, drop your weapons, get out, you know. Instead, she just shoots them through their armor that you take 3 full shots, 3 full charge shots to kill. It was ridiculous. So their design wasn't good. And then there's a cameo. And of course, who always cameos in Star Wars games? It's Darth Vader. So in this cameo, pretty much Sliro is talking crap to him, and he breaks a bunch of glass, and he puts it all around him and threatens him, and it's a big bad scene. But I just felt like it was an insignificant scene, unnecessary, added in. There was no need for it. It didn't make sense he was there. It didn't. And on top of that, like I mentioned earlier, the game was $70, but there is story locked away, and in order to unlock that story, it's $110. I didn't like that, and of course they used that to push people towards Ubisoft Plus, which is a little sleazy, right? It's not just Ubisoft Plus that you have to get, it's Ubisoft Plus Premium, because new games are not on Plus. Premium, that's basically $20 after tax, okay? So that's how much it is per month. Now, if you are feeling like you just have to play this game and you have to see for yourself, I highly suggest that you go get Ubisoft Premium Plus and cancel it immediately, because this is exactly what I did. $20, you'll play the game, you'll be done. It's about a 20-hour game. You can do it in less if you just go through the main story. It definitely can take longer if you do the completionist stuff. It'd probably take about 40 to get everything and do all the side quests. But either way, I just cannot recommend the game at all, especially at full price. But $20, it's worth a spin if you just feel like you have to get your hands on it. So that's pretty much how I felt for it. Overall, 1 through 10, I honestly am putting this right around a 3 or a 4. It felt incomplete. It felt broken. It was frustrating to play. Very little time would go by where I wouldn't experience some sort of bug, some sort of glitch, some sort of level flaw. Oh, speaking of level flaws, the way that the level design in this game was lazy. There'd be pretty decent levels, it would feel like, and then all of a sudden you just feel like there's big empty spaces for nothing, or they would have you an event again and again because they didn't design the levels very well, so they would make up for it with vents to get you around. And the vents were these huge vents. I just walk into a vent. I just walk into the vent, just crouch down a little bit, and I'm in the vent. There are giant vents everywhere in these places, and they wonder how people are breaking in. I understand it's a video game. It was so ridiculous, these vents, and how many they were, and they were just everywhere, and you pretty much just went wherever you wanted through vents. It was ridiculous. I would give you this game a ridiculous out of 10. That's my official score, okay? Now, that's pretty much all I have for this. If you've played it, let me know what you think, and if you were thinking about it, tell me, are you still getting it? Or if this is just a game you're here to watch get dunked on, let me know in the comments below. But don't forget, on your way out, like the video, definitely subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I will see you in the next one. Love you, minute. Peace. Bye.
He's owning every